From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
The fight for more workers, not just on the farm, but at USDA.
We can get them in the door. We're having a hard time keeping them.
The latest look at what all that snow and rain out west means for drought conditions. As input costs take a bit of a dip.
Yeah, we've seen fertilizer come down a lot.
What that means for your bottom line right now on Ag. Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Some good news for farmers heading into planting season. Input prices are down, but how much? AgDay's Michelle Rook joins us with more.
Clinton, while the input costs for the 2023 crop are still historically high, farmers I talked to around the country say the prices for fuel, fertilizer, and herbicides are below last year at this time. That's helping to lower their overall cost of production as they head to the fields. Prices for some fertilizer products are down from last fall and especially the record highs during the 2022 crop season. Prices for potash and phosphate have dropped slightly, but the biggest change is in urea.
Yeah, we've seen fertilizer come down a lot, particularly urea. We've already got, our anhydrous and nitrogen bought for our corn, but urea has come down substantially from what it was a year ago. It was $1 a pound, for actual N, and now it's much less than that.
Supply chain issues not only created supply shortages, but also pushed herbicide prices to near or record highs last season. But the cost of popular herbicides like glyphosate have also tumbled.
Last year we were paying anywhere from $65 to $68 a gallon, and I think the stuff I locked in back in December on our chemical prices, I think it was in the mid-30s. So it has dropped in half.
Gatton says that will lower his cost of production for the 2023 growing season after he spent 2.5 times what he normally spends to raise last year's crop. So it's a welcome change. And product prices do vary from area to area depending on when retailers made those purchases. For example, retailers that booked fertilizer last fall or during the winter will still have to pass those higher prices down to farmers, but farmers may see a cost savings going to companies right on the river.
All right, thanks, Michelle. No doubt input costs will factor into USDA's prospective plantings report, which is due out at noon Eastern today. Look for coverage online at agweb.com and the AgDay social sites today. Tyne Morgan will have reaction to the report this weekend on U.S. Farm Report, and we'll have a complete wrap-up Monday morning on AgDay. China's buying streak of U.S. corn continues. Here's an updated look at all the old crop corn buys by Beijing since March 14th. The latest flash sale happening yesterday for 178,000 metric tons or 7 million bushels. You can see the grand total so far coming in at more than 3 million metric tons or more than 128 million bushels. That's a lot when you consider one of the largest vessels that can carry grain can haul just under 3 million bushels of corn at a time and is the length of 2 football fields. Another big story we're following right now, the weather and a massive storm that's carrying everything from snow and rain to hail and the potential for tornadoes. That storm stretching from the Dakotas to Louisiana. We get the latest from meteorologist Andrew Whitmire.
Let's dive right into it and take a look at the severe weather threat on this Friday. Again, we've got an outbreak expected for today across parts of the plains, deep south, as well as parts of the Tennessee and Ohio River valleys. We're looking at the potential here for some strong, long-track tornadoes, damaging wind, heavy rainfall, as well as some very large hail that will begin to move on through this area here as we go throughout this Friday. Let's take a look at the future radar. As we go throughout this morning, we'll be seeing ongoing showers and thunderstorms across the Great Lakes region. And then as we head towards the latter half of the afternoon and into the evening hours, we'll be watching 2 zones here for a tornado threat. And again, these highlighted areas here, we're talking Memphis up towards eastern Iowa and northwestern Illinois. That'll be the area that we could have some long-tracked tornadoes, and some of them could be rain-wrapped, setting up for a dangerous situation. That front moves its way eastward throughout the weekend. We could even see a few snowflakes across the Great Lakes as we head throughout Saturday, right on into Sunday. And this system, it'll bring with it some wind as well. Outside of thunderstorms, we're going to be looking at some wind gusts this weekend, especially on Saturday in the Great Lakes, where some wind gusts could be 40 to 50 plus miles an hour. And that wind will begin to climb on down as we head towards Saturday late afternoon and into Sunday. And we're not done with the severe weather threat just yet. It's only getting ramped up as we head right on into April. We've got another outbreak that we're already tracking for the first full week in April. We'll break that down in Maine weather.
Thanks, Andrew. The snow keeps falling in California's Sierra Mountains, as you can see in these videos from California Highway Patrol in Truckee. The UC Berkeley Central Sierra Snow Lab reporting that area has passed the 700-inch benchmark for snow so far this season. Now, the record is 812 inches set back in 1952. For the entire mountain range, the state is reporting it's at 236% of the April 1st average, with an average snow water equivalent of more than 60 inches. And it's not just snow, but unrelenting rain in some cases in the state. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom now requesting a presidential major disaster declaration for the areas impacted by storms since the end of February. If approved, it would provide eligible counties with housing assistance, food aid, counseling, medical services, and legal services. It would also help with ongoing emergency costs. Newsom also expanded the state of emergency to now include 47 counties. But all that moisture out west is making a huge dent in the drought picture. The latest drought monitor showing 35% of the west is in drought. That's down more than 10% from just last week. California, now 28% drought, down 7% from last week. As for the rest of the country, drought conditions are down another 3% from last week to just over 30%. The Senate this week passing a bill that would block the new Waters of the U.S. rule. It would overturn an EPA rule that defines navigable waters and restores protections put in place by that Clean Water Act. Opponents say it's too restrictive and places a burden on farmers and agribusiness. 5 Democrats join Republicans in the 53-43 vote. The resolution now goes to President Biden, who has threatened to veto it. American Farm Bureau Federation applauding senators for voting in favor of repealing. We are still awaiting a ruling from the Supreme Court, which could change the current rule. A train hauling ethanol and corn syrup derailed and caught fire in Minnesota early Thursday morning, forcing the evacuation of hundreds of people living nearby. The BNSF train derailed in the town of Raymond. That's about 100 miles west of Minneapolis. BNSF officials say 22 cars derailed, including about 10 carrying ethanol. Railroad officials say they aren't especially concerned about groundwater contamination because much of the ethanol will burn off and the ground remains frozen. No injuries were reported due to the accident. The cause hasn't been determined. All was calm ahead of today's prospective plantings report from USDA. We get you ready for trade reaction coming up next. And later, we're off to Louisiana to see the latest research for sugarcane farmers in the country.
AgDay is sponsored by Germinator Closing Wheels. Germinator steel closing wheels, perfected in conventional, excels in no-till. Order 12 to 16 rows today and qualify for free shipping or 20% off an end zone moisture management package.
The largest egg producer in the U.S. is reporting profits surged more than 700% in the last quarter due to higher egg prices. Reuters reporting Cal-Maine Foods controls about 20% of the U.S. egg market. Now, it says the average selling price for a dozen eggs at the end of February was $3.30. That's more than double the average of $1.61 a year ago. Net income soared to more than $323 million from just over $39 million a year ago. Corn drifted lower while cattle moved higher Thursday despite all of those big export sales to China. Michelle Rook is back to talk about some of the other market moves with John Payne.
Well, grains were leaning mostly lower on Thursday, but cattle had a good day. And here to talk about that, John Payne with HedgePoint Global Markets. And let's talk about that cattle market. Some new contract highs there pushed by the cash trade, right?
Yeah, I think that the spec money is happy to put money to work here on the cattle side, specifically the feeders and the back end of the live curve. The front month here, I think it's taken a lot of folks by surprise. I thought the estimates that we would see 170 weren't really there. So I think maybe some short covering here as the April goes into delivery. But the back of the curve is where my mind is focused right now, really a year out in the April 24 that traded 175 today. That's the highest we've seen a contract trade ever on the live board. So at this point, the market is high and expensive, but it's got this carry to it where you have the deferred contracts that are really expensive. In the case of the live, April, February of next year. In the case of the feeders, the contracts that trade out in the back into Q3, Q4, it doesn't work well for the packers here. So you look over at beef prices trading 280, which is a good price for them, but not making a lot of money here. And I think there's going to be a rock meet hard place kind of a trade here where somebody's going to get screwed. Either somebody's going to have to buy short foot, or you're going to see a pretty good run up here in the beef.
Yeah,
one or the other.
And at the same time, we saw grains kind of drift. How much of that was just kind of running into some resistance here and seeing some profit taking since we're going into the end of the quarter?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty impressed that corn traded the way it did. I mean, when you look at feeders trading up $1.50, $2, you would expect corn to really be taking it on the chin. I think it was tied, to a little bit of a wheat sell-off as well in the grains. We've had a nice move here. Just over the last 2 weeks, I think we've seen KC wheat rally $1. So this is not the time to get bullish, in my opinion, from here. I think the story that we've talked about for the last 6 weeks, 3 weeks really, would be, Chinese exports, Argentina. I think the potential rally needs to come from Brazil, and right now I don't see anything major. I think there's some problem areas to focus on, but to get that corn market to go back above 7, we need to see somebody making some money with it. And you look down in the hog pits, they're not making a lot of money right now, and so it's questionable as how high they're going to chase this market in the near term.
And a lot will depend on the reports today, and we'll talk about that,
of course,
after those come out. Thanks so much for joining us, John. John Payne joining us with HedgePoint Global Markets, and we'll have more AgDay coming out.
To find John's newsletter, This Week in Grain and Oilseeds, head over to www.thisweekingrain.com. The 2023 Bracket Busters Challenge, presented by Case IH, is underway. Who's still in the game? To find out, head to AgWeb now through April 3rd to check the leaderboard.
Meteorologist Andrew Whitmire joining us here, taking a look at, what looks like another severe weather threat for next week. These seem to be stacking up.
Yes, and it looks like this trend may continue into April with plenty of cold air up to the north, a lot of deep southerly warm air to the south, and that's going to set the recipe here for severe weather as we head on at least into the first half of April. And I think this is going to be kind of a weekly occurrence here, but nonetheless, as we head into early this week on Tuesday, we've got another severe weather threat that we're going to track here across parts of the country. And moving on into Tuesday, we've got another outbreak of severe weather that we're going to be watching, especially across the Dixie Valley as well as the Tennessee Valley, and that we're going to be watching for another round of some strong storms. And this will be for Tuesday of next week. We could be looking at another round of several tornadoes, damaging wind, flooding rains, as well as some large damaging hail. Now let's turn into the jet stream here to take a look at this pattern here as we head on into this weekend. There was our first little wave here that did bring with it the severe outbreak to close out this Friday. Now as we head throughout the weekend, we're going to see that cooler air staying across the far northern states, but watch what happens as we head on into Tuesday. We're going to be watching this deep trough developing out west, and that's going to bring with it the cold pockets of air that'll be fuel for this nice ridge that'll continue to build here across the deep south all the way up to the Great Lakes states here, and that'll bring with it enough fuel here to again allow for some stronger storms to take shape as we head on into the mid portion here of this week. And then as we go throughout the jet stream to round out this week here, we're going to be watching a few subtle systems coming on through once again across the Pacific Northwest and still trending cooler for the northern states. Looking at the precipitation outlook here, again, no doubt we're looking at another round of some severe weather across the Dixie Valley deep south. That's where the moisture will be saturated up around the Great Lakes as well, and across parts of the Dakotas where we're anticipating another round of some snow to fall for parts of the Dakotas. Looking at our drought monitor here, and again, the places that are going to get more moisture don't need the moisture. Meanwhile, places that really need the moisture still, we're talking places down across the central and southern plains. Well, unfortunately, the moisture here for this upcoming week is going to be lacking. Temperatures today, it's going to be a warm one ahead of that front, 64 in Chicago, 77 in Memphis. Meanwhile, colder air right behind it. That's a look at temperatures across the country. Now let's take a look at your AgDay select cities. Freeport, Illinois, severe thunderstorms, high 65 degrees. Going over to Caledonia, North Dakota, snow and blowing snow, high 28 degrees, low right at the donut. And going over to Parker Strip, Arizona, clouds increasing, high 70 degrees.
AgDay Farm Country Forecast is brought to you by Calhoun Superstructure, engineered fabric buildings serving the agriculture and fertilizer industries for over 30 years. Visit calhounsuperstructure.com/AG. That's calhounsuperstructure.com/AG.
Farmers have a tough time getting enough hired help on the farm, and apparently so does USDA these days. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack telling lawmakers it's not just hard finding workers, but retaining them within the agency. He spoke this week before a Senate Appropriations Committee. He says particularly hard hit are the County Farm Service Agency offices and new USDA veterinarians.
They actually end up starting at APHIS. They're excited about their job. They do an amazing job for a year or two, and then someone basically says to them, hey, in the private sector, you can make $10,000, $20,000, $25,000, $50,000 more. Why don't you come over to the private practice? And that is the challenge.
Now, Vilsack says the federal compensation system needs to be adjusted for today's workforce situation. The director of the World Food Program is stepping down next week. David Beasley has been in charge of the program for 6 years. The WFP supplies food assistance around the world in an effort to stave off hunger and starvation. Now, Beasley says last year the organization raised $14.2 billion. That money went to providing food and other assistance to people affected by conflict, droughts, floods, earthquakes, hurricanes, and crop failures. But he says because of a lack of money, 20 million people in Afghanistan are now in severe food insecurity. 6 million, he says, are knocking on famine's door, and he says his agency is being forced to cut food rations. Beasley also pointing out the importance of the Black Sea grain deal in an effort to keep people fed.
Ukraine alone grows enough food to feed 400 million people. It's absolutely critical, especially now with inflation, food costs, fuel costs, and I can go into devaluation of the currency, as well as many other factors that the entire world is struggling with. Many countries depend 50, 80% on grains from this region. This initiative must continue. We've got a 60-day window, which is not enough. We need to extend it an entire year and allow the commodity market to calm down, because that affects global food prices for 8 billion people, not just a few hundred billion people.
Cindy McCain has been confirmed as Beasley's successor. Beasley says he is returning to his farm in South Carolina to take a little break. There's one type of farming that's a pretty sweet gig: sugarcane farming. Up next, see how researchers are working hard to improve yields in the country.
In the Country on Ag Day is brought to you by Pivot Bio. What if you had the nitrogen you need already on seed? Pivot Bio is the first company to apply nitrogen on seed. The nitrogen you need, now on seed, from Pivot Bio. Learn more at pivotbio.com.
It's a major crop in Louisiana. We're talking about sugarcane, and efforts to increase yields just got a big financial boost, as LSU Ag Center reporter Craig Gautreaux tells us.
Variety development is the lifeblood of the Louisiana sugarcane industry. It generally takes 12 years of research and field work for a new variety to be released, and this work has greatly benefited Louisiana's sugar industry.
It's been the major driver for doubling yields between 1930 and 1970, and then again we doubled yields from 1970 to today. So the breeding program has been a big driver towards yield increase. Not the only thing increasing yields, but a big driver.
To help with research associated with the LSU Ag Center's Variety Development Program, Harry L. Laws and Company donated $250,000 that will be used to help fund genetic research aimed at increasing the number of crops from a single planting.
We've been beneficiaries of the sugar business for 150 years, and we felt compelled to provide additional resources to the Ag Center, specifically for the Sugarcane Variety Development Program.
Sugarcane has been grown commercially in Louisiana since 1795, and it has grown into a major economic player.
Not only does it have a culturally rich story to tell, but it provides a $4 billion impact to the state, a $25 billion impact to the U.S. economy, and it provides an essential ingredient for everybody to enjoy.
Most farmers are getting 3 to 5 crops from a single planting. Some of the equipment being purchased through the donation may help scientists identify traits to extend the crop cycle.
This kind of equipment is essential to do this kind of research. So it's a very important step to accomplish, and can be one of the most difficult to achieve.
Being able to extend the crop cycle is significant because planting is one of the most expensive components of sugarcane production. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
All right, thanks, Craig, and that's all the time we have this morning. So glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Griffiths. Have a great day.